What up, peeps? I just thought I'd say, what up, peeps? Is there anything worth taking seriously? That's kind of what I decided I would talk about in this video. You know, you might think that after making videos for 8 years or so, I would just, like, run out of things to talk about, or just be, like, you know, speechless as to what to say. And a lot of the times, that's kind of how I feel, but all of a sudden something comes to mind, and I think if I don't share it in a video, then where am I going to share it? I mean, and I don't want anybody in my personal life to feel offended by that. You know, sometimes I think my wife feels bad because I say, oh, I can't express myself, and she's like, well, you know, it has this, why can't you talk to me, or you know, unload these things on me? To be honest, honey, if you are watching, it's because I don't want to burden you with all my bullshit, blah, 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 blah. I have a million thoughts in my head, and so I figure spitting them to a camera is much easier. So 20 minutes a day or so on the camera has turned into, you know, at least 100 minutes a week, you know, which in 52 weeks is 5,200 minutes. And, you know, in 10 years coming up, 50,000 minutes of time that I've sat. So what is that, 1,000 hours? A fucking 1,000 hours, which then a few more years that I've actually made videos. That is a long time. But time is very relative, and it's in perspective to whatever else you do. You know, you could go with... What I mean by that is, you know, some people will say, do you know how much time you spend brushing your teeth in a lifetime? And then you think about it, and it's like months on end, or a year or something. You're like, oh my god, wow, that's a long time. But you put in perspective how much time you eat, and how much time you take a shit, and everything else, and of course it's all the same. Life is a series of processes. So it's not about how much time you spend doing any one thing at all. It's about how useful your time is, and what you get done with that time. Now, sorry, I'm still a little bit sick, so my nose is a little bit plugged. For me, I'm really... the things I understand aren't the same things that I can put into action. In other words, sometimes I feel like, you know, I have this great motivation to become successful. And for me, success isn't money or fame or any, you know, even YouTube, you know, fame or anything like that. For me, success is my family being able to support my family, and helping ease the burden on my wife as a waitress and for what she does, you know, to her not to have to work as much. For me, that's what I'm working towards. That's my goal. But more than that, there's also the internal struggle of trying to find who I am and discover my own reality in life. But for me, work, getting things done, isn't something that is defined easily. It's not something that's defined by going to work. Sometimes I feel guilty because I work from home, and then I think, well, okay, so when I went to work and drove a fucking hour every day to get to work and an hour to get home, you know, and worked 8 hours a day, and broke my back and killed myself and caused my sciatica and everything else for a few $100 a day, you know, I'm actually, is it really worth it, you know, all that stress? And so through all the years, I've gone through these different philosophies. I mean, it's like, I really believe in a strong work ethic, but I have a hard time determining exactly what work is, if that makes sense. And as a human, I feel like we're all kind of stuck in that. Like, we want to be able to know what we should be doing, but at the same time, there's that free will that allows us to do whatever we choose. And I don't know, it's funny because I can look back at times when I was working. Like, I look at some of my old videos when I had really short hair. I mean, and I've gone through a few different phases over the years, obviously, but and I was working at this house in the West Hills where we were doing this remodeling job, and I would film the sunset every morning, you know, before I went to work. I can't even find those videos anymore, but you know, YouTube tends to lose anything more than 2 or 3 years old, so it's in there somewhere. But you know, there was one day I showed up to work and there was an owl just sitting in there, and I remember filming him for, you know, putting it on YouTube and talking to the other guys that worked there and explaining to them my channel and what it was all about, and they didn't understand where I was coming from. The whole time we were there, you know, I had my headphones on and I worked for myself. I was a carpenter, so I would do my own jobs and worked probably for the guy for about a year and had my headphones on all day, every day. And they'd ask, you know, what do you listen to? And I'd say Alan Watts or Manly P. Hall or you know, the Great Courses series, which was a, you know, series of all these different philosophers, great teachers of history and whatnot. It was all spoken word, and in that year I gained so much knowledge and insight about myself. I was just obsessed with learning, but not trying to force it, but just picking up little bits of the same knowledge over and over. I would even put some of them on just random, so I would just pick up with a lecture here, a lecture there, nothing really tied in, and all of a sudden things would start to make sense, and I started to understand what life was really about. And not really about like this is what life's about, but life's about in terms of how to deal with the onslaught of negativity and bullshit that we encounter every day. And I learned to, you know, ignore the travesties that I can't control. I wasn't going to quote that old AA thing, you know. It always comes to mind, you know, the serenity to change the things, or accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Is the AA, the Alcoholics Anonymous, like, you know, serenity prayer, I guess. I think that's what it is. But it goes way back before that. I mean, it's an old philosophy, you know, thousands of years old. It's just been retold over and over, just like so many great quotes and great stories. The hero's journey, you know, it's retold over and over. It's not because people can't come up with new information or ideas. It's because it's a story that needs to be told in modern terms all the time. The journey of each one of us to find ourselves. And we're all growing, and so what I've discovered about myself is that I don't know shit. And so as I've shared my ideas on this journey, I can look back and cringe at some of my thoughts, but still be open enough to realize that whatever I say now, I want to be able to look back at in 10 years and say, well, I may not have known everything I was talking about, but at least I wasn't making any bold bullshit claims. And so that's what I try not to do. But we're all learning, we're all figuring this out, we're all wondering where we come from and where we're going, and in the meantime, we're just sharing some ideas about life. Peace.